Defense is now expensive.
So when it comes down to you playing offensive, when a person is blocking, you don't need to worry about him doing perception in mid-battle, right? So that leads me to believe that there is no reason to actually do that, because why would you need to get behind your opponent if he can't defend it anyways? Because you can kind of continuously do chain moves like that to break his guard. You can go for the flying kicks, or you can do this to lower his defense, right? So when it comes down to his ki. So with these chains being put into place right now, they become overly dominant in the use for the fact that you're able to probably get to all of them without the hassle of it. You're worrying about your opponent being able to kind of be advantageous in this scenario, right? Boom, guys, you already know what it is. You know LTA, aka TANKdGAMER. Now today I want to be talking about SparkingZero and its current state where it's at this point in time, right? Now this may be a very unpopular opinion, but the nerf they had with the perception when it came down to blocking, when you could sonic sway between that was a bad choice to get rid of that. And the reason why I'm saying that now is because that takes away a defensive measure what the game used to have before, right? So therefore you're able to counterplay your opponent. They were able to kind of just play aggressive. Now the issue is players don't get punished for being aggressive, and just keep slapping buttons. Now it's actually more promoted for players to do so. And now when you're playing defensively now, only way to get out of that approach is by using evasive moves where it comes down to like instant vanishing or super counters, right? Now the problem with that is all time based. This game's an online game, right? So it all comes down to the input delay depending on if it's going to be favorable for the opponent defending. Now this is the issue because we already know the game netcode isn't great, but now that you have no opportunity able to get out of these moves unless it's good time and things like that, it becomes to a point where offense becomes overly whelming and it leads for more like mistakes when it comes down to you being guard broken or your opponent just getting the upper hand on you, even if he's not betting you in that sense away. And it's more easier to make the most of it. And with that being said, now it leads me to understand that there's not going to be much functions for the instantaneous movement, which was good when your opponent would use a perception in case he was trying to go for a sonic sway. But now because they've took the sonic sway ability out, you'll start to notice that players aren't going to be using circle as much. So because they're not going to be focused on using the perception at all now, your opponent is only just going to vanish. As soon as my opponent just teleports, my opponent's left wide open and now they're getting punished for it. So you wouldn't really go for a high rush speed movement anymore because it leads it to be kind of pointless in that sense of way, right? So therefore, your offense has been nerfed in that department, but also your defense in terms of how you're playing against your opponent. But the offense isn't weaker in this scenario because, like I said to you, you can go for your rush chain moves where your opponent is less still in a 50-50. So even if you read your opponent's attacks correctly and you were able to block them, you're still left in a 50-50 where you're probably going to get punished a lot more often than being able to escape. Higher oppressive characters like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta will be more advantageous in the situation, and even like Android characters as well. They're going to be more advantageous because one, SS4, as we know, he does most melee damage in the game, and then you've got the androids that's going to get infinite amount of ki, right? So because they're not even losing ki, if you are able to do counter them anyways with super counter in this situation, they are then in a situation where you have to be able to beat them out, and they're going to have more ki than you in that circumstance. So it really puts you in the defense as if you're playing defensive in the first place in this game. So it just means that you have to be more aggressive than your opponent, but then depending on who you choose, you're going to have more of the high advantage. It's not like when you was choosing it against a character who was highly aggressive like Super Saiyan 4, and you was able to counter him with a sonic sway by him just being attacking you with just mindlessly, and therefore you'll be able to bring his ki down and obviously go full out finisher. They've actually kind of unbalanced the game in the nature where the aggressive players are going to be winning more than the players that are playing defensively because they have to. You know what I mean? Just look at the scenarios where if you're Hercule and you're going against SS4, that means you have to time your attacks perfectly to even get a sonic sway on him, and realistically we know that if you don't time it correctly, he's probably going to die. So that's the reason why I think taking out sonic sway in the block is actually a terrible idea, because like I said to you, innit, you can pull it off this way, but the problem with being able to pull on that way comes down to the online coding, and as we know, the net code isn't great. And that's my reason why I think that they should put sonic sway back on into the block to make the game more optimal for defense play, and obviously leaves player to not actually button mash at the same time. Because again, like I said to you, I know people rewarding the fact that they feel they can attack at front without being punished for it now. If you're going to attack your opponent, then make sure that you read them correctly at the same time. Now, I know, like I said, you can escape it eventually by getting the perfect vanishes on point, but how hard is it to even counter that if you're going against someone who's in sparking and they can literally just keep slapping buttons? So, as you can see, it's infinite, you can't even get out of it. But say, for example, they go for something like that, and 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 then what happens? Your key's broken, and they can go for a friggin' ultimate. This is why they need to revert back to putting Sonic Sway back in, because to know that you can kind of get away with just delivering stuff like this on your opponent just because you're aggressive against them is unfair, especially when you're using a character who's higher DP. For example, if you're higher DP, you have more options to use when it comes down to your chain attacks. For example, the lower your DP, the lower chain attacks you probably have. So when you're at a high tier character and you're able to use infinite amount of chain attacks to kind of mess up your opponent's defense, you're going to realize how oppressive it actually is when you're using a stronger character, because you can't go into your Sonic Sways anymore.
Alright guys, so let me know, what do you think about the changes they made with Sonic Sway in the game? Is it something you opt for them to have, or do you reckon it was better how it was before? You know what I mean? Well, anyways, you really know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and like I always say, I'll see you in the next one. So let's get it. Bow! TANKdGAMER out.
Past the full of victims, step in my way and get your body engraved to the cement. Enemies and cemeteries left where they're meant to be. Must be crazy to think they could bear me. I'm still rising, I came with integrity to the game. I'm breaking like a referee, but I'm not waiting. I play with this energy, so I keep scoring, shooting like a penalty. Ways on a train, make games like a synergy. Good for the pain. Cells they react, maybe go on stronger. System go lit like a TNT brick spot. If they be launched at me, then I own God. They need to retreat, they be beating this dunya. Pizza, none of bully in a freezer. Heal up and cut like a wound cut Caesar. I'm send like a ruler. Once in a blue moon, go ape like a Vegeta. Don't you give a